Good morning, Rick. It's good to see you.
Hey, good morning, Keith. How are you today?
I'm doing great. The request for today's podcast comes from a good friend of mine who we work together, and she has been a blessing in my life in terms of what she's taught me and just how selfless she is in contributing to others. Beautiful, beautiful soul. And her
Mhm.
name is Lori. And Lori sent me a question because we do the practice every single day together, and we started this last summer. And her question was, do you have a podcast about seeing yourself through the eyes of others rather than the inner critic? And Lori just told me that, one of the things that happens for her is that she's very hard on herself. She points out what's wrong, what could be different, or how she is, you know, just not living up to her commitments or a goal, or, can't get over the hump in certain aspects. And I mean, and that's not what I see. I see someone who's just amazing. So the title of this show is going beyond the inner critic. And so I'd love for you to kind of speak to Lori or anyone who has this inner critic going on. And I've certainly seen it in my life, and I can share at the end, like some of the things that help me, go beyond the inner critic. So Rick, why don't you kick us off with that?
Well, that's a big topic, and it definitely exists. I think all of us have this notion that there should be something different that we're doing, or something more important, or we should be doing it in a different way, or when we do it, it's not adequate. And I think that's a very interesting concept because the only judge of all of that is you, right? The person that's going through it. And so I think part of the problem is that we recognize the inner critic, but don't do anything about it. We just let it sort of take over. I think for me, the way that I've been able to get past self-criticism and self-doubt is by two things. One, not trying to control it, not trying to slay it, not trying to make it go away or bury it. What I try to do is to acknowledge its presence, take whatever insights come from it, and then draw the line when the judgment starts flowing. And I know that's hard to do, but let me give you an example. Let's say that I'm procrastinating. I have a deadline Monday. Today is Saturday. And I don't do anything today. And then Sunday night, I start getting nervous and I start talking to myself. And the self-talk is something along the lines of, you had a whole weekend. You just totally blew it. You didn't even make good use of that time. You could have just done an outline and it would have helped you. But now, no, no, no. Now, tomorrow, you've got to do all of your work tonight for tomorrow, and it's going to be terrible. You're going to be awful about it. Okay. So that's an example that happens to me or used to quite a bit. And I think the way that I got past it was the idea of being aware that my critic was there, but not accepting the judgment that I was lazy or that I did something that I shouldn't have done for myself. I should have done something a little different. So the monitoring of it is number one. And then number two for me has been getting rid of the judgment against all odds, because we're always fighting the idea that judgment is proper. It's the negativity bias. It's the idea that we have to have a strategy. And so once I make the decision that I've monitored and I've found myself starting to go down that road of judging myself, I just stop and I say to myself very quietly, judging, very quietly in myself, to myself in my mind, judging. And then that is a trigger word for me to stop it, to let it go. And then the next thing that I do, and this is the last third step, is what can I do now in this moment to make my issue that I'm having resolve? How do I resolve it in this moment? And then by cutting off the judgment and starting on a program of what can be done, that usually tends to solve it. One last point. It isn't big stuff like this, like procrastination on a brief or procrastination on something that you know you should have done, or even completing a job that you feel that you should have done better at. It's everything. It's almost everything. I mean, it can be cooking. It can be I didn't give enough for the birthday party, or I wasn't there for this I mean, all of the things that happen in your life every day, you can turn them into self-critic. And so if you could monitor it and then stop when the judging comes up and remind yourself judging and then go for the problem, attack the problem. Those are the things that work for me, Keith. How about for you?
Yeah, Rick, very similarly, I'm aware of that voice, that inner critic. And, my friend, said that, people see her differently than how she sees herself. They see all her wonderful talents and just the contributions that she makes, to everyone around her. And she's just a joy to be with. And I think that's wonderful. I think what you want to be careful of is is if you do that, that's great. But what if people say something negative about you? Then how you feel or how you are experiencing the present moment is still dependent on something outside of yourself. And so that's a slippery slope because you don't have to go far. And if you listen to social media, there's always someone sharing about how people said something negative about them. Well, I don't know if you said something good or bad about me. I have no clue because I mean, while the bad is obviously more enjoyable for my ego than something negative being said, it's still the same thing. At the end of the day, is that someone is making a statement, and it's just a statement that's being made. You don't want to build your ego on it, and you don't want your consciousness to rise and fall based on what someone else is saying. So I think that's an important point. In terms of inner critic, the inner critic is not you. You know, Michael Singer tells this great story about how the voice in the head, and he said don't listen to the voice in the head. It's not you. You're the conscious being who's aware of the voice in the head. And then someone said something, well, I have a lot of voices in there in my head. Which one is me? He said none of them are you. And so the same thing applies here, is that the inner critic is not you. It's just like you said, a voice. Just become aware of it, and there's nothing to do about it. Just let it float away, but be aware. The awareness is what loosens that tether of you being tied to what it has to say. And once you can let go of that, I mean, you float, it's just amazing. And it shows up many different ways. Most recently, I had a challenge with, and I did this in a podcast recently about my serve, and my critic had a lot to say about my serve and why wasn't it going in or out and all those things. And once I just just continued to be aware of it and let go of like, okay, it may go out, or it may go in or whatever the case may be. And it became funny to me, it became really funny. I think that and you do want to see if there's anything, and you mentioned this, Rick, if there's anything useful from the critic, that was said. So, for example, if the critic says something like, "You fail at everything you really try to do," I mean, you want to just see, hey, is there a bit of truth in that? I think that's helpful too. Uh, if your path is to really just get a little bit better every day, and you taught me that Japanese term kaizen, just a little bit better every day. And for me, what that has been just being consistent. Just that's how I get better every day. It's just being consistent, not being great, just being consistent. So if you have a case of keeping commitments to yourself, and that could be in the form of exercise or nutrition and all this other stuff, and you can be consistent, and to the extent that you can be consistent with them. I mean, if you're injured, obviously there's only so much you can do, but there's still something that you can do. If you are, you may not be able to run, but perhaps you can walk. You may not be able to walk, but perhaps you can stand. But all of that counts as you being consistent. And I think there's a lot of ways to a critic that is so entrenched and that is matured. There are little things that you can do to combat that negativity uh, before you can, if it takes a little bit to get to the step of just letting go. And one of the things that I did when my critic was so negative, I could show it evidence of all the things that you have done. So, for example, it would say something like you mentioned, like you didn't get all this done today. It's like I only had three things on my list today. I got all three of those done. You know what I'm saying? Like you can put something in evidence for, or you're a terrible person. Really? I opened the door for like 5 people today. I think I'm pretty good. There's something that you can do to combat that. Like, you know what? Like you just are not keeping your commitments when it comes to this. Well, you know what? I ate 3 days that were clean. I'm gonna have a fourth day that's clean. And you just keep, if you have to have something to talk to that inner critic, there it is. But you don't want to make a habit of that because at the end of the day, it's really good at judging and criticizing and causing you suffering. You don't want to play that game. It's a game that eventually you won't be able to win. Your thing, your way out is to let go and recognize that the critic is just another voice and one that you don't have to identify with or take on. And I think you just practice it every time it comes up, become aware of it, and then let it go. Become aware of it and let it go. You want to close this out, Rick?
I just wanted to give a tip to Lori that might help her. Some of what I was talking about came from a woman that I thought was very helpful in silencing my inner critic, and her name is Nicole Lewis, Lewis hyphen Keeber, Keeber. Nicole Lewis Keeber, and she does a lot of work with people. I think she's a psychologist, but she does work, and I think she offers online tips, and maybe that might be helpful to Lori as well. So, for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I'll just end with this, Rick. One of the things too about when you were so critical of yourself, and I can't do this, and why can't I do this? Everybody else can do it, or whatever the conversation may be. One thing that's helpful is especially in Lori's case, to where she gives and cares about so much other people, is that kind of attitude, behavior, that kind of narrative actually brings everyone else down. It may not be directly, but when you're beating yourself up like that, it does it. And you don't have to even say it out loud. People can just see your light dimming, your energy just not where it used to be. One of my friends, Julie, we play together on the pickleball court, and she can be very hard on herself. And she became aware of, like, man, it took a little bit of time, but she became aware about how that was bringing her partner down. And it really does. What brings your partners up is just, we got this. What brings you up is to tell yourself, we got this, whatever the case may be. And I was listening to a podcast by a guy who really works on the mental side of sports and the mental game. And one of the things that he was saying, and you can apply this to pickleball, was exactly that. That when you are beating yourself up, you're not being a good partner. You mean you think it's only hurting you, but it's hurting your team. And you want to be someone who lifts others up. And the same thing goes with the inner critic. Don't let it run your life. And again, you may not think you're being vocal about or repeating what it's saying out loud to the people around you, but it's showing. And so you just really want to just be aware, exert some agency. And the way that you do this is just really just become quiet, become still, observe, and if there's action to take, you take the action, which is at the end of the day, just let it go. Thank you, Rick. I love you.
I love you, Keith. Well said. Take care.